Hello everybody and welcome to VFR. Today we are here in San Diego at Montgomery Field and we are taking a look at why you should fly the MG HJet, one of the most fun little private jets that we have in the sim right now. Really fun if you like a G3000 form factor, but wish you could go faster. Also fun if you just kind of want to feel like a Bond villain and fly a cool, distinctive jet. So the MG HJet is a pretty distinctive airplane, as you can see. Obviously, it has one notable feature in that it has its engines mounted over the wing. OTWEM, the over-the-wing engine mount. This has a lot of the benefits of a high-mounted rear engine, like you see on most private jets or something like a CRJ, compared with engines underneath the wing, like in a 737. You get really low ground clearance. You can have really small, sturdy landing gear. And it also helps to isolate the passenger cabin from noise a little bit compared to having it bolted straight onto the cabin. Also gives you a little bit more room back there. So there's a little bit more space in the cabin for passengers and baggage and stuff without all that structural material bolted into the engine. But it is a distinctive design. There have been a couple of other iterations of this in the past, but for regional jets, but none have been particularly successful. But the HJet, again, uses all the latest and greatest technology. Now, the HJet in Microsoft Flight Simulator is based on the HondaJet in real world. Again, HondaJet is a small, light, a very light business jet, capable of carrying 6, 7, 8 passengers, not very many, and one pilot. You have two twin turbojet engines. These are GE Honda HF 120 engines. And these first flew in 2003, entering production in 2015 after kind of a long development and testing prototyping stage. There's a small number that were built between that time period, between 2003 and 2015, and then they've built 200 in production. These are built actually in North Carolina, in Greensboro, at Piedmont Triad Airport in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they're flown all over. But it is just a neat, cool one. If you're into Formula One, there's an Alpha Tauri branded HJet as of 2022. So it's just one of those cool little, cool small jets, but it's very light, and it feels like it's an interesting mix of turbojet operation and general aviation flying, which it still kind of feels like. Now, again, if you're looking at this airplane, you've obviously got the over-the-wing engine mounts in the back. These kind of narrow, semi-swept wings and a big T-tail up here. We have our spoilers out, actually, right now, so you have a couple speed brakes back here. And again, you can kind of see the engine pylon here. This is, again, the structure that's holding the engines onto the wing, and there's been a lot of design and analysis involved in making sure that the airflow is properly around that. So that's a whole big, that's a major advancement, really, made possible by things like computer-aided design and the use of computers engineering. Very fascinating stuff, but can get a little nerdy into the weeds. You also get some static elements like a GPU. You can get engine covers and things like that you can deploy from inside. So the last thing to take note of is actually the front and the cabin. So the cockpit is a little bit more bulbous than maybe a normal jet is. Again, that's all CFD related. They did a lot of testing and analysis on that to come up with what they think is the ideal shape for this engine, and it's all about airflow across the body of the airplane and how that interacts with the engines and the whole surface. But again, it's kind of a unique little design, gives the pilots a bit more space in there while being aerodynamically friendly, and it just has a very contoured shape. It is somewhat unique compared to something, again, like a CRJ, but again, or a CJ4 that we've seen on this channel before. So that's enough jabbing about the airplane and all the engineering nonsense. Let's hop into the cabin and get started. So as you come into the cabin, the first thing you probably notice is it's not huge. You've got 4 seats here. We've got a little couch for 2 people here, so you could hold 6, and then 1 in the co-pilot seat would get you up to 7 with a single pilot operation, or you could have 2 pilots. But again, it's not a huge cockpit, but it is very nicely modeled, and it does give you kind of a sense of this is not a huge jet. So let's go get settled into the cockpit. So here's the cockpit of the MG HJet. And again, if you're looking for a detailed how to fly this airplane, we do have that available on our channel. Check it out. We'll link it in the description below. But we'll go more into the buttonology there. But safe to say, this is a G3000 based cockpit, and it's packaged. The model, the add-on is packaged with the G3000 working title mod. So you've got the latest and greatest working title implementation here for your autopilots and all your maps, and you get the full features of the G3000 suite. It's pretty good. Everything is controlled by these two panels here. We have a couple of special things that we'll go through as we go into it, but for now we can close up the doors. So you can control the goodies here from Sim Actions. So you come down here, this is the load manager. We're going to set it up with 4 passengers in the back, a little bit of gear. Let me defuel that a little bit though. A little bit of gear, 4 passengers, and 1 pilot. Now this is where you control that. This plane is one that you will be limited in payload. So you can't take full fuel and full passengers for a far distance. You can either get rid of passengers and gear, or you can dump fuel. But there are compromises that are going to have to be made. This is a small airplane. You've got a range of about 1,000 nautical miles if you're pretty light. But yeah, you will find yourself limited by those kinds of considerations. Something to take into account when you're planning your flights. Plan for weight and balance. Now, continuing to look around the cockpit, obviously, if your autopilot up here, you've got your warning annunciators and altimeter settings up here. And then mostly the control surfaces are buttons. And really what we're looking for, the nice thing about a modern jet like this, is we're looking for normals on most things. We want just about everything to say normal. We are going to use the inbuilt checklist for all this. And again, for a more detailed view of all that, we'll go through that in the check ride video that we've posted. But you have basically a full checklist here included into the G3000. And to tick off items, you just hit this button and you kind of go through that. That is what I found the best way to fly it, is just running through those checklists. So the other thing to note as we're getting started, I've programmed in the route. Again, it's going to be very much a G3000 focused. So if you go into your flight plan page here, that'll let you program in your route with all your departure procedures and arrival procedures and approach procedures as well. This is also where you'd go direct to a waypoint and just basically control everything. If we want to zoom in and out of the map, we use this knob here. But again, these two control panels are really driving your big screens. So I'm going to go run these checklists, get us all ready for engine start, and then we'll get going. So each flight really starts with this initialization page. You can run through the system tests. Again, it's just one button there at pre-flight. Your weight and fuel calculations are also done here. You can use get from sim to get it from the, just straight from the sim if you want to do that. And then you can settle your V speeds here too. So that's a way to calculate it if you get it from sim, or you can calculate it on your own if you want to. But that's kind of where it is, and everything really is driven through these screens for the most part, especially for all of the major control elements. So we're getting ready to start engines for our passenger briefing. We are going to be departing out of Montgomery Field, Mike Yankee Foxtrot, on the Padres 2 departure. This is an RNAV departure that will essentially take us out towards Los Angeles up the coast of California. Pull up Navigraph here. So we'll be departing out and again following up to Gwin at or above 8,000, and then just continuing on until we hit Chicken, which is going to be our transition, and then we'll make a right-hand turn out to the north towards Las Vegas. All right, so we've completed our passenger briefing. All our controls are set and ready to go. Doors are closed, parking brake is set. CAS messages are telling us our engines aren't on, so let's fix that. And our electrical volts are 29, so we're above 23.5. So engine start in this airplane is the model of simplicity. You're going to hit the start button and then let it start. Once it reaches about 10, we're going to hit it into idle. So we're going to start the right engine first. And then once N1 goes up to 10, we take it out of the idle detent. So that's 10.2. And then it should spool up to 20 something, 25 usually. So bang, bang, boom. Just repeating the same for the left. And just making sure everything is in the green. It's helpful because, again, it makes everything green. And that's engine start. All right, so we're coming up to the line. Let's run before takeoff checklist. Flaps are set to takeoff. They're in the takeoff mode. We've got trims. So for trim, we want to make the triangles down here light up in green. 4.2 should do it. Speed brake, we want to make sure that is retracted. KLAS messages, we got nothing. Navigation is an FMS. Flight guidance is set. Takeoff landing data is confirmed. Our takeoff briefing, we're going to be taking off. We're going to fly runway heading, and then we'll follow the magenta line, climbing up to 8,000 feet at Gwyn. Radar and ice protection not required today. So that's it. So we can also switch this screen around, go into aircraft systems, and we'll put it back onto the status page because that shows you the most information. So let's taxi on out and get up onto the runway. All right, so we're lined up here on runway 28. Takeoff's going to be pretty simple. We're going to hold on the brakes, bring the power forward, knock it into the takeoff detent. You should see TO, TO. Once you see that stabilize, we can release the brakes. We are taking off with takeoff/approach flaps. You don't necessarily have to, but usually there are two flap settings. And that's the one you usually use. We are going. We're going to rotate around 115 knots today. That's V1. Rotating. And the other thing to keep in mind with this plane is it's not a STOL plane. Gear coming up. We're going to hand fly it off the runway. So once we've taken off, power back to MCT, maximum continuous thrust. And we're going to continue our climb out and then get the autopilot configured. So autopilot's just like any other Garmin system, pretty much. You've got your autopilot, your flight directors. We do have a couple of small things that we'll talk about in the cruise. We're going to do a speed climb, flight level change up to our altitude of 8,000 feet. And we'll even go higher because that's an at or above. We need to be at or above 8,000 feet at Gwyn. So we're just past 8,000 feet. We're going to climb up to, keep on climbing up to 30,000 feet, flight level 300. And we're going to accelerate to 250 knots. Flight level 300 is going to be our best performance. It's the optimal performance for the airplane. We can go the fastest. You can also take it as high as flight level 430. So you can go higher if you want to, but 310 I think technically is the best performing altitude for it. So this airplane's cool. We talked about it a little bit, but it's a very light personal jet. It makes me feel like a Bond villain. And it's got that General Aviation feel, but you have turbojets in the back. So you're perfectly capable of doing everything the big jets are doing. You can shoot all your IFR approaches. You can fly pretty much any SID or star in the national airspace. But you get a little bit of G3000 action instead of maybe an FMS computer. So it's a different experience than flying an airliner. It's much more General Aviation feel. It feels a lot like the TBM, but you can go pretty fast and pretty high. So, not that the TBM can't. So it is good, and the working title G3000 adds a lot of depth to the simulation. It just gives you a really good thing to interact with. That really, I think, because you're interacting so much with that control system, that really makes it or breaks it for me. You also get a couple of interesting, unique features. We have a cruise speed control. It's a little bit of an auto throttle, but not a very detailed one. So when you get up to cruise, you can hit that button. You set the power, hit that button, and it'll maintain that cruise speed. We also have a VNAV mode. So I've programmed in some VNAV. You can actually see the profile here. We're climbing up to top of climb. And you set all that through the flight plan. So you can see here auto descent starting at mizzen 24 flight level 240, and then descending from there. The blue numbers are ones that I've punched in myself, and yeah, so it will follow that glide path, but you have to put in all the numbers. It's not like a 737 that's going to put in the numbers for you. You have to go look them up and put them in. So that's fun. It's just, yeah, very much a GA feel with a turbojet in the back. It's just a cool, unique light airplane. And it is one of my go-tos for the private jet kind of thing in VATSIM. Very much, if you like the CJ4, if you like the private jet aspect of the CJ4, this might be for you. So up here in the cruise, and one thing I want to look at is cruise speed control. So this is a pretty simple tool addition for your autopilot. It comes with the HJet, but essentially it just lets us hold as a mini simple auto throttle for our for cruise. So lets us set a power and the airplane will maintain that speed. So say we want about 250 knots, we can bring the speed up a little bit, increase the power. And once we settle around 250 knots, we can hit the CSC button here. That's 249. And you may have to hit it a couple times, and it wants your speed to be stable. But once it goes purple, it'll now hold your speed for you in the cruise. Now, it won't work in VNAV mode, and obviously you're using other methods to climb and descend with your autopilot, but it is helpful, a small thing that they've packaged custom for the HJet. So as you cruise out towards Vegas, what do you need to know about flying the HJet? Now, the first thing, again, is get familiar with your G3000 stuff. It takes a little bit of practice, especially if you're used to flying more airliners. Again, everything really flows through your two control panels here. And that means everything, controlling the maps, controlling all this. You also have these buttons here. But again, for the most part, you're running the airplane through these panels. That is good to know, especially when you are... it takes a little bit of getting used to if you're not familiar with the G3000, and it's a good thing to learn. That's one of the fun things about it, but it does take a little bit of effort. Again, the checklist that we've been using is very good, and it will basically take you through the entirety of the flight, and just really nicely go through everything you need to know. So I'd absolutely recommend using the checklist. And then, yeah, cruise speed control and your VNAV. Especially VNAV can be a little finicky. You have to program in the altitudes, your main altitude restrictions yourself, and it will calculate the rest. And then it will take you down. But it will react somewhat aggressively when it first starts descending. So it will really pitch down. You might get a little bit of fighter pilot action. And again, this airplane is pretty nimble, pretty small, and it has a fair amount of power. So it will make some aggressive maneuvers, and you can do some aggressive maneuvers with it. But just something to be aware of, that VNAV, when it kicks in, it'll really pitch you down. It's not necessarily broken, but keep an eye on it and be ready to take control. Well, here we are flying the Renders 2 arrival into Las Vegas. We'll hit mizzen at flight level 240 and then descend from there down to Las Vegas Airport. Our initial descent will take us down to 8,000 feet, and then we'll go down to shoot an RNAV approach into Vegas. That's Lima Alpha Sierra. So if you notice on our MFD here, we're coming up on top of descent. Now to catch this, we just have to click the VNAV button and start to manage our power. We'll have to come back on the power. But the airplane's now going to try and follow this this path. Again, it'll generally try to overshoot a little bit, but it will try to follow the VNAV path. So you get that green light, that'll be VNAV, and then you can come down. Again, it's kind of it's not as capable as, say, something in your airliner, but it is something that can help you get down to an altitude. This is going to take us down to 24,000 feet, for level 240 at mizzen, and then but you get a top of descent marker and everything based on that. The one thing you do have to watch is your speed. You may need to use speed brakes, especially if you're coming down at a steepish angle. So that's interesting. We're starting we're starting our descent into Las Vegas now. We will basically keep it coming downhill, and then looks like we're going to be landing runway 8s. All right, so we're making the turn to Jaeger now. We're going to be down at 8,000 feet, and the VNAV, again, is programmed so that it should take us all the way down to the runway following this RNAV approach, but we will take control here in a second. But still, pretty capable and good for coming downhill. Now, for landing, we're going to go full flaps. You can use takeoff flaps in icing conditions. Now, we shouldn't need any speed brakes. But again, the airplane, when landing, it tends to float a little bit, so you do want to cut the power and have a good strong flare, but yeah, it does like to float just a little bit when it comes down. Again, I can't speak for how realistic that is. I haven't flown a HondaJet, but it does seem to float on final. That said, you're fully capable of doing all your ILS and all your instrument approaches that you could want to do through the G3000. So perfectly capable of flying on VATSIM, especially with this control suite. All right, so we're now fully configured for landing. We're still in VNAV. We can ride that a little ways down. We are good to fly in visually. So we do see the runway. We have full flaps out, so both notches. We're down to landing flaps, and our approach speed is going to be about 100. And it's going down quite steeply. Our approach is going to be about 110 knots. So at this point, I have control. And we're just going to fly it on in. Speed brakes are up, flaps are down, gear is down, 3 green. And again, the trick, once you're all lined up, is to just to hold it in the flare. Not too aggressively, and if we do have to go around, we'll just throw full power and bring the flaps and gear up. Again, it is a pretty nimble plane when you're flying by hand, which may take a little getting used to, just depending on what exactly you're trying to do. And I can just, like a fighter plane, I could put my velocity marker right on, or our flight path vector right on the threshold of the runway. And again, your speeds are going to be, you know, fairly slow. The other thing is this is not a STOL airplane, so it's going to take some runway to land. I learned that the hard way. I think it was Block Island. So it's not a plane for tiny airports. You do need a decent-sized runway to land safely. So we've got the runway made. We're a little fast and a little high, but not too bad. Again, just holding. It's floating a little bit. So if you do need to get down in a hurry, make sure you really plant it. But here at Las Vegas, we are looking all right. We're going to taxi on off, get our jet over to a nice FBO, and we'll button it up. So that's a quick look at why you should fly the HJet Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's a fun plane, gives you kind of a GA feel with the G3000, but with some turbojets behind you, which lets you do pretty much whatever you want. Great for VATSIM, great for just puttering around. So a really fun plane. And yeah, can't really recommend it enough. One of my go-to private jets. If you're looking for something similar, really it's a turboprop, but the TBM 930 is going to be kind of your best bet. It's going to be very similar with the G3000 cockpit. Something like a King Air might also be similar, although that's a little bit larger and even a little bit more heavy duty. If you're interested in the business aviation, the working title CJ4 is another good one. We've done a video on that on our channel if you're interested. But yeah, really a fun, interesting airplane. And I think it brings a really interesting design to the sim. So thanks for coming along today. Thanks for joining us on our flight from San Diego out to Las Vegas. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, fun places that you've flown the HJet or any other airplane, drop them in the comment section below. As always, this has been VFR. Take it easy, y'all.